Hey guys, my name is Deb Marnie and I'm from Aussie Maille, and this is our chain mail tutorial channel. Hey guys, a big hi, hello, welcome, how are you? It's great to see you today. Thanks for popping in and spending some time with me. So today I've got a new weave tutorial for you. This one is a variation on the Japanese weaves called stepping stones. Alright guys, let's get into it. Okay guys, so I've got some sample pieces made up here for you of the stepping stones weave. So coming up here on the side of the screen will be a list of the rings that I used to make up these pieces. They'll also be listed down in the description section that you can find down below this video. But to run through them quickly with you. So each piece uses 3 different ring sizes across 3 different gauges. So these large rings here, these ones are 12 gauge AWG, which is 2mm diameter wire with a ring ID of 8mm. The next size, medium size, is 14 gauge AWG 1.6mm diameter wire with a ring ID of 4.75mm. And then finally the small rings are 16 gauge AWG 1.2mm diameter wire with a 4mm ID. Our medium-sized bracelet, the large rings are 14 gauge AWG 1.6mm diameter wire with a ring ID of 6.5mm. The medium-sized rings are 16 gauge AWG 1.2mm diameter wire with a ring ID of 3.5. And finally the small rings are 18 gauge AWG, which is 1mm diameter wire with a ring ID of 3.25mm. And then our smallest size, the large ring, is 16 gauge AWG 1.2mm diameter wire, ring ID is 4.75mm. The next size ring, the medium size ring, is 18 gauge AWG 1mm diameter wire, ring ID is 3mm. And then finally the small rings are 20 gauge AWG, which is 0.8mm diameter wire with a ring ID of 2.75mm. So this is a lovely bracelet using the Japanese weave. It is simple to do, but like all Japanese weaves, it is time consuming. So I will put that out there for you. It's not something you're going to be able to whip up too quickly, especially if you're doing the 20 gauge version, which is my favorite of the 3. It's a beautiful, delicate version that looks absolutely stunning on. But as you can see, it's quite simplistic, but quite stunning. I think it's a really, really lovely one that you'll enjoy doing. Okay, so as I just said, there are 3 ring sizes in each weave. Now I'm going to be doing the middle-sized bracelet today for you. And to do, we're going to do up the small chain sections first, which, showing you on this larger one here, is this section here. Okay, we're going to do these up first. So to do those per chain, you're going to need to close up 14 of your small rings. So you could go through and close the majority of them up in advance, but for each chain you're going to need 14 of your small rings pre-closed. Okay, so once you've got 14 of those, the next step is to take up one of your medium rings, okay, and then onto that we're going to pop 6 of the rings that we just pre-closed. Okay, so we've got 6 on there. And I'm going to close that up, and then we want to double our medium ring. Okay, so taking up another medium ring and feeding that through the 6 small rings that we just placed. Now this is going to be tight, so if you find that your bracelets, your pliers I should say, aren't fine tipped enough for you to put this many rings on in one go, you can just pop on 2 or 4 and we can add the others later. But I'll just show you how to add them all in one go so we don't need to add the additional rings later. You do whatever works best for you. So once you've got your 6 small pre-closed rings on there, we're going to take up another medium ring and feed it through 2 of the small rings. And then before closing, I'm going to pop on 4 of our pre-closed small rings. So again, if you're not comfortable working in tight spots, or your plier tips perhaps aren't as fine as these ones, pop on 2 small rings and you can add the other ones later. So again, we're going to double our medium ring up. Okay. So your work should look like this at this stage. So we've got the 2 pairs of medium rings with our small rings there. We're going to take up another medium ring, and then onto that we're going to feed it through 2 of our small rings that were already in weave, and before closing, pop on our final 4 of our pre-closed rings. Close your medium ring up. Okay, and double that ring. Okay, and your final chain should look like this. Okay, so we've got 4 loose rings on each end of our chain and 1 pair of loose rings coming off our middle ring. So if you, as I said, weren't able to work with all the rings on there at once and you only added enough to construct the chain, you need to now come back and add all the extra rings on there so that you've got 4 loose ones on each end of your short chain and 2 loose ones, or 1 pair coming off the middle chain. Okay, so you're going to need to make several of those up in advance. I would suggest making about 3 of these chains up before we start constructing the rest of the bracelet. So at least 3 of these chains, and then when you're done that, I'll meet you back here and I'll show you the next step. Okay, so I've got a handful of our chains, short chain sections made up, and I've just popped a twist tie through one of those through the beginning small pair of rings. You don't need to do this. I've just done this so I can hold on to it a little better and show you guys more clearly as we weave along. So taking up your first chain, and we want it so that we've got that loose pair of rings on our center chain. I'm going to do it so that it's facing to the right. Alright, so taking up your opened large ring, we're now going to feed it through the middle 3 pairs of small rings that we've got on our chain here. So we're skipping this first one, obviously, that we've got our twist tie through. We're going to go through the other remaining 2 on that ring, the 2 on the middle ring, and the first 2 on our last ring. So we just feed our large ring through all of those small rings. Okay, and once we've got them all on, and this last one is being a little stubborn, okay, there we go. So we've got them all on to our large ring, but before we close that up, we want to take up a new ring, a new chain, and we want to feed the end pair of small rings from our new chain onto our opened ring here. But we want to make sure that that middle pair there, the ones that are coming off our middle set of rings, is facing towards the other one. So we don't want it facing towards the top of our weave like this, okay? We want it, those middle pair of rings, facing down towards the bottom, and we pick up our first pair of rings here. Okay, so that all our loose rings face towards the bottom of our weave, or face towards the other chain that's in our weave. And once you've got that second ring situated, you can close your large ring. And your work should look like this at this stage. Okay, so taking up another large ring, this time we're going to pick up the remaining small rings on our first chain. Okay, so go in and pick up those rings. We then want to pick up the remaining 2 rings that are on the first chain of our one we just added, the 2 in the middle, and then once we've got those on, the next 2 in our sequence. So you can see it is a little fiddly. So just have patience, don't lose patience with it, just have patience and those rings will slip on. They're not too tight, it can just be a little awkward getting it onto the large ring. Okay, so once you've got those in there, so we should have a total of 4 pairs of rings attached to our large ring. And then before we close that up, we want to take another chain. Again, we want to make sure that the middle pair of small rings is facing down towards the chain we just added, not sticking up at the top of the weave. And we want to feed that new chain onto our opened large ring. Okay, so your work should look like this. Once you're happy with that, close up your large ring. Okay, and your work should look like this. So we've got 2 of our large rings placed. I'm going to place one more for you. So opening up a large ring, taking up our work. So I'm going to go through the final pair of small rings that were hanging off our previous chain, and then once we've got those picked up, we go and pick up the next 6 rings, or next 3 pairs of rings on the new chain that we just added. And then once we have all of those in place, we're going to pick up a new chain. Again, making sure that we've got our middle pair of loose rings pointing down towards the rest of our work, not sticking up towards the top of it. We're going to scoop up the first pair of loose rings on the end, feed them onto that large ring. So you can see, whoop, let's do that again. You can see that all the loose rings are now pointing down towards the middle of our work. Once we're happy with the position of our chain, we can go in and close the large ring up. And your work should look like that. And you just keep adding large rings all the way along until you've reached the length that you require. And then to finish it off, I just used another one of my medium-sized rings to feed through that last pair of medium rings. To one end you would add the clasp, and to the other end you would just add the ring for you to close your clasp onto. There you go, guys. That's how you weave up stepping stones. Okay, my lovelies, that is it. That is the video tutorial for today. I hope you enjoyed it and you found it useful. If you did find it useful, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up here on YouTube. Share the video if you like. While you're here, if you're not a subscriber, it would be awesome if you would do that for us. Ruffle around in some of the other content we have here. There's plenty of you to choose from. And last but not least, guys, don't forget to give our shop link that's up here in the corner a little bit of love and affection. That's where we sell the bits and bobs and you know what's you're going to need to make up this weave and many others. Alright guys, thanks once again for popping in to see us. I hope you're all keeping safe and well, and that I catch up with you again sometime in the very near future. Bye.